If you've ever wanted to experience the benefits of deep squats, but your hips won't allow that to happen, I'm going to walk you through exercises that will improve hip flexion and pelvic control. This is the second video in my 10-part series for getting into a deep squat. So when people can't reach depth in a deep squat, it's usually not because of flexibility. One of the most common reasons, aside from ankle mobility, is also hip flexion and also proper pelvic control. If your pelvis can't move with the hips, the joint runs out of room fast. This routine is designed to restore that space and also teach you how to control it. For this exercise, you're going to need a strong resistance band and you're going to need to anchor it to something sturdy and low. Also, I have a lot of people that tell me that they have knee pain when kneeling. So this is a pad. It's got stability, but also cushion. And I find that this helps a lot of people that have knee issues. Get into a half kneeling position. You're going to be working both sides. The knee that's down, you can use this, and the other leg is going to be forward like this. And that's only if you have sensitive knees and do need this. Step into the band. This is going to be the front foot. You're going to bring it all the way up into the crease right here. Also, make sure you're up on your toes on your back foot. That brings a sense of stability. In this exercise, you also want to make sure that you're not shifting the hips or turning in any way. You want to be straight. The band is going to be pulling directly from behind you. So make sure there's tension in the band. You don't want it to be like this. Your foot should be pointed straight and your knee should be pointed in the same exact direction as your toes. Now you're going to slightly tuck the pelvis, but that's only to make sure that your ribs are stacked. At this point, you're going to come out and you're going to allow the band to pull in that crease for just 2 seconds. And then you're going to come back in. You're going to do 2 sets of 8 to 10 reps of these. You're also going to be doing these on each side. This exercise creates a space in the joint, so this way your legs can move upward without pain and compression. And this band encourages the femoral head to glide backward as the hip flexes. And this reduces anterior joint compression and allows for deeper hip flexion. This makes it easier to sit down low and also to do things like putting on your socks and of course, squatting without feeling that pinching or blocked sensation. Now that we've created space in the joints, we're going to work on phase 2, which is controlled strength. For this exercise, grab a lighter resistance band, something about 20 to 40 pounds. Anchor this low. Pay close attention to the band placement. This is not the standard hip flexor strength exercise. You're going to step into the band to where it's looped up right in the crease here. You might need to hold this in place initially if you have one of those tubular bands. The band should be up and pulling directly behind you. I'm going to show you something very important that you need to do with your foot. Make the toes wide. Now you're going to take the ball of your foot and almost like you're trying to squeeze it into your heel without scrunching up the toes. So watch what I'm doing here. It's a very small movement. See how I'm just creating better arch support here? I'm creating a little bit of a higher arch and it allows me to have better stability here. Now you're gonna shift the weight to the standing leg and create that tripod with your foot. Also make sure that the ribs are stacked so you can slightly tuck the pelvis just enough to where everything is nice and even. Make sure that you're not twisting and turning, your back is straight, and you can hold on to something if you need to. As you're keeping that same neutral pelvis, ribs stacked over the pelvis, you are gonna lift that leg up to about 90 to 110 degrees. You're gonna hold, and then you're gonna come back down. You should feel a pulling in this area, but it should not hurt. I also find that this is very helpful to do in front of a mirror or to film yourself if possible. When you're lifting your leg up, you wanna make sure that your back is not arching in any way. If you feel that it's going to arch, then you want to stop at that point. It strengthens hip flexion without allowing anterior glide and also lumbar compression. Now, I did mention that it does help with single leg stability and also squatting, but it also helps with walking and also climbing stairs. This next exercise is going to improve how the thigh bones sit inside the socket during hip flexion. For this exercise, you're going to need 2 things. You're going to need a yoga block or a foam roller. You will need a low bench, the height equivalent to roughly knee height. You're gonna sit down on the edge of it. You're going to take this yoga block and instead of placing it in between your knees, you're going to be placing it lengthwise in between your feet. You also want to make sure that your thighs are a little bit wider than hip width apart. You're going to keep them in this position. You're not really going to be able to see much movement with this exercise, but you will definitely feel it. Now you want to make sure that your ribs are stacked over your pelvis. And in order to do that, you want to have a slight tuck here. So it's not an excessive tuck. See that little movement right here? Just a slight tuck where the ribs are stacked. So there's no ribs flaring or anything like that. We just want them nice and even. The goal with this exercise is to squeeze lightly with your feet, and then you're gonna keep the legs open. So make sure that your knees are not coming in like this. In the position with the ribs stacked and the back straight, you're gonna squeeze with your feet slightly and hold for 3 seconds. You're not gonna be doing this excessive. It's just a light squeeze. You're gonna do 1 set of these with that 3-second squeeze, and you're gonna do that 8 times. This enhances femoral head positioning in deep hip control. This helps those knees track better when you're getting down into that deep squat. Dead bugs help so many different things, but I chose to place this exercise in this routine because it directly teaches your core and your pelvis to support hip movement. Lie on your back and bring your legs up tabletop. Now you're going to exhale lightly and bring your lower back to the floor. Basically, you want to make sure that your ribs are stacked, so a nice even pelvis. Now you're going to bring both arms up. You're going to slowly bring one arm overhead and then the other leg back down to the ground, but you only want to come as far as to where the lower back will allow. So in other words, if you feel like your lower back is starting to arch and your ribs are starting to flare, that is going to be your stopping point. So if your stopping point is right here and you feel like your back is going to arch, then you stop right before your back lifts. You do not want to lose contact with the floor. You're going to do 2 sets of 10 slow and controlled reps per side. It improves lumbopelvic control, so that way hip flexion doesn't come from spinal movement. Grab a bench or a stool. You want it to be roughly knee height. And this is because when you sit down, you want to make sure that the hip is roughly bent at that 90-degree angle here. So you're going to sit on the edge, and that would look like this, basically just your glutes on here. Now you're going to make sure that you don't have a super big arch in your back. You want your ribs stacked over your pelvis. So that might mean just giving a little tuck right here. Keeping your back straight, you are going to lift one leg up, and you're going to hold this for 5 seconds, and then you're gonna come back down. You're going to do 2 to 3 sets of 8 reps of these with that 5-second hold per side. This builds end range hip flexor strength. It improves active control at the top of hip flexion. While it does support single leg movements, it can also support things like deep squats. Now that you've built strength where you need it, the final step is going to be teaching you how to use it in a squat. Now let's get your stance right first. You're not going to go super wide with this. When you're lowering in this position, your knees are in the same angle as where the toes are pointed. So in other words, you don't want them coming in like this. You don't want them to cave in. You don't want them to be wider and your feet be all up like this. You want them at the same angle. Also, it is okay for the knees to go over the toes. That's actually what we want. You also do not want an excessive arch in your back. You want nice and neutral. The goal here is not to come forward like this. Pick up your weight and you're going to be holding it like this, just like this. Now you're going to get into your stance. You can point your toes out slightly if you need to. Bring it close to your chest and bring your elbows in. This is your starting position on the side. Now you're going to come down in a count of 4 seconds, so nice and slow. You're going to allow your knees to go past your toes. And then when you get to the very bottom, you're going to hold this position for 3 to 5 seconds. And then you're going to come up in a count of 2 seconds. You're going to do 2 sets of 5 reps of these. When you hold the weight in front of your body, it changes the balance point. And that shift does something really important. It encourages you to stay more upright instead of falling back. And that matters a lot when we're talking about deep squats. So here's the thing. In a deep squat, your hips have to bend a lot. Your thigh bone has to move backward in the hip socket, and your pelvis has to subtly move with it. Not a lot, but just a little bit. Just enough to make some space. So if that combination doesn't happen, the body looks for other ways to make that deep squat happen. And that could look like you falling forward, that could look like you falling back, and that can also be a pinching feeling in the front of your hips. So when you have a weight and you hold it in the front, it helps keep your torso more upright and tall. And when your torso stays tall, your lower back doesn't have to compensate and excessively arch in order to get down into the movement. And when the lower back stops stealing the movement, the hips are finally forced to do their job. But here's the important part. This exercise is not about forcing depth, but what it does do is teach your hips and your pelvis to work together at depth. Here's another really important part to this exercise. When you pause at the bottom of the squat, you're not resting, you're training control. You are teaching your pelvis that it can stay steady while your hips are fully bent. You're teaching your nervous system that that deep squat is safe and manageable. For a lot of people, the bottom of a squat feels unstable or threatening, even if there isn't anything structurally wrong. The pause at the bottom also removes momentum, and it forces your body to organize itself instead of running away from the position. A lot of people just lack that coordination between the hips and the pelvis. The goblet squat helps restore coordination. It's not necessarily how deep you can go in this particular exercise. And while there can be other reasons why people can't get into deep squats, hip flexion and pelvic control is one of the most common reasons why. This routine restores hip flexion space, builds control through the pelvis, and also teaches your body how to use that range so that deep squats feel strong, supported, and pain-free. If this video made you move better and feel better, make sure you hit subscribe, like, comment, and then share with family and friends.